everyone, this is Shannon for Hero Arts. In this video, we're going to create this really beautiful but simple card using the new Tulip Field Heroscape stamp set and frame cuts. This is the Tulip Field stamp set. This is a layering stamp set. There are 4 stamps to complete the scene. The first 2 layers create the greenery, and the second 2 layers create the flowers. I'm going to start with the bottom stamp. This is the first greenery stamp. It's kind of the biggest stamp in the set, or it has the most of the image. I'm going to ink it up with green apple, which is kind of my lighter green here. I'm just going to ink up the whole stamp and then just stamp it directly onto my white scrap of paper. I'm using my MISTI today to make sure that I get my layers perfectly lined up, but you actually don't need a stamp positioning tool like a MISTI to stamp this Tulip Fields. The layers are really easy to line up, and I was able to do it just with an acrylic block, so really simple to line up these layers. I'm now moving on to my second layer here. This one's really simple to line up again because the bottom lines up directly with the bottom of your first layer that you stamped. After I got my stamp lined up, I picked it up with my MISTI, and now I'm going to ink it up with my darker green. This is Moss. I'm just going to ink it up and stamp it right on top. You can see this adds the detail layer, really kind of starts to define that greenery, making the stems and kind of the leaves visible. Now we're moving on to the flowers. I'm going to grab this first stamp for the flowers, and this one again is easy to position because these flowers just fill in all the white openings that you have in that greenery level. So once I got it positioned, again I picked it up with my MISTI, and now I'm going to ink it up with the cotton candy, which is my lighter pink. So once I stamp this first layer of the flowers, I only have one more layer to go. And I'm going to grab my very last stamp here. This is going to be the detail layer on the flowers. Just kind of defines the center of the flowers. Just going to line this one up. Now this does not have to be absolute precision here. It mostly just goes right in the center of the flowers. But just line that up. Then once you get the position right, then you're going to ink it up with I'm going to ink it up with my darker red here, and then stamp it, and that will complete our Tulip Fields. You can see how much depth you've got with those layering stamp sets, and it was so easy to do. So easy to create this beautiful field, just 4 stamps and you're done. Now that we've finished stamping our Tulip Field, I'm going to move on to stamping some of the other elements in our card, and I'm going to stamp this hot air balloon. So in addition to the 4 stamps that create the field, this Tulip Field stamp set comes with a hot air balloon, a cloud, a tree, and a windmill. So lots of things to build a scene. Now I first stamped the hot air balloon in cotton candy. Now I'm going to do one of my favorite things to do for a stamp that's kind of solid like this hot air balloon is. I'm going to partially ink it up. So I'm holding this crimson color ink pad slightly at an angle so it's not touching the whole stamp, and that's inking up just the very top and the bottom portion of this hot air balloon. And when I stamp it, you'll see that it creates a really cool look. It'll look like some roundness. I've created some roundness to the hot air balloon. I'm going to create a second hot air balloon the same way. I've already stamped it in my cotton candy. Now I'm inking up the balloon again with this crimson, just partially inking up the bottom and the top, and that creates that illusion of roundness and just adds some more kind of depth to that image. So now that I've stamped my images, I'm ready to die cut them out with the matching dies. So I'm going to use this landscape die here to cut out our scene. Once I get it in position, I'll just use a couple pieces of tape to hold it in place. Then I'll grab the balloon and I'll die cut one of my balloons out with that. Again, position it and then use some tape to hold it in place. And then I'm going to grab this cloud die and just die cut cloud from some of the white cardstock left on my scrap here. So I went ahead and ran it through my die cutting machine, and as you can see here that the landscape die cuts out just kind of the top and the sides of our Tulip Field. You'll have to physically snip it away from the bottom or remove the bottom yourself with a paper trimmer, which I'll do later. I went ahead and die cut my second my second hot air balloon in 2 more clouds. So now we're going to move on to some trimming. I have a panel here that's actually a little bit smaller than an A2 panel. It is 4 by 5 1/4, so I just cut 1/4 inch off of the top and one of the sides. And you can see because I made it a little bit smaller, our landscape goes beyond it. So I'm actually going to trim that little bit of 1/4 inch off of the landscape and also trim off that bottom white section. And now that our landscape is done, I'm going to move on to ink blending our sky. So I have that panel here, and I'm going to ink blend with Splash Reactive ink. The Hero Arts Reactive inks blend beautifully. I really like blending with them. And I'm going to use just this one color to create a soft gradation from kind of medium blue at the top to a very, very light blue, almost kind of the white of the paper, just a slightly bit of blue there. Because I'm doing such kind of a soft gradation, I really do take my time here and really make sure that I get as seamless as I possibly can gradation with my blending tool. And now that I have my sky done, I'm ready to kind of put it all together. So I'm going to start with the landscape. I'm just going to use some glue here, just add it right to the back side of our tulip field and adhere it right down at the bottom of our panel. Then I'll grab some of my other elements, like my hot air balloon, and start with that, kind of glue that one down, and then my second. Then I'll move on to the clouds. I'm going to adhere some of these clouds a little bit beyond the panel. I will trim off the excess once I finish gluing down this final cloud, and I'll just turn it over and grab a pair of scissors and just hold the blade of the scissors right up against the edge of the panel, and I'll make a nice perfect clean cut. And now that I'm finished with my whole little scene here, I'm going to adhere the panel onto an A2 top folding card base made from Dove white paper. Once I have the back of the panel with glue all over it, I'll just stick it right down to the card front. As you can see, because we made that panel just a little bit smaller than an A2 panel, we have a nice border from the card base. I'm now going to stamp my sentiment, the very last thing. I've grabbed a sentiment from the Tulip Field stamp set, and I'm going to stamp it in intensified black ink, which is a really great black ink, and then just stamp that sentiment, and that will complete the card. I'll now hold the card up to the camera so you can get a good look at the beautiful Tulip Fields landscape. I just love this layering stamp set. It's just a wow factor every time you stamp. It's just so fun. I can't wait to try it with different color combos and just really play with it. And it just worked so perfectly to create this beautiful scene with some very simple ink blending and some of the images that accompany the stamp set. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.